around this guy in the lobby that seems to know a little bit about fighting. Anthony Smith just had his 58th professional fight, and he won 40-ish of those over the years. Beat up a lot of the top guys. Guys who are in the Hall of Fame, guys who are former champions, and he's done very well for himself. And he came to train with me a couple years ago, first time. Going to come back again soon. And he me up with these body triangles, and I have to try to not get choked then. So he was taking it easy on me, but I was ill-prepared, and he me up pretty good. So got a little better defense now, but I think he still find a way to me up somewhere. We'll see. I think, how do you get into this? I was going to say, I think a compelling part of your story, but let's go back earlier. You told me some pretty interesting stories in the past of like growing up in Nebraska, and you had fighting in barns and just random places that you weren't always on the biggest fight card of the year at UFC. So where did that start?
So I was 17. I guess even before then, my parents divorced when I was early, and my dad was a Vietnam vet, had really bad PTSD, and tried to hold his shit together when I was a baby, and it just kind of all fell apart. He ended up in drugs and alcohol real bad. So they separated, so I didn't really have a dad around. So my grandpa was kind of that father figure in my life. When I was 16, my grandpa passed away, and my whole shit kind of just fell apart. Ended up dropping out of high school. I had a Division II scholarship to go wrestle in college. Dropped out of high school with enough credits to graduate. Wrestling was kind of my only thing, and got kicked off the team because I was being an idiot. Dropped out of high school, and then I go to a Subway right after I had just turned 17. Went into a Subway, and there's these flyers when you go to pay for the sandwich. There's little crudely made flyers, the ones where they mass print them. They're like someone sits and cuts them or whatever. And it's black and white, and it just has it says amateur fight night, Omaha, Nebraska, there's not a lot on it. It just says amateur fight night and the location, essentially. So I'm like, well, I'll go watch it. That seems like something cool. I'll go watch. I show up, me and a buddy, booze cruise, drinking Busch Light all the way from Nebraska City to Omaha, which is about an hour and 15 minutes. We go to watch, and the cage is on the floor, on top of a wrestling mat, in a little, kind of an auditorium hall, it's not like a fight venue. It's just a little, BS building. And the cage is on the floor. It's regular fence. Like nowadays, when you watch the UFC, all that fencing is coated in vinyl, so it's just plastic coated. So it's fairly safe. It's pretty stiff, but it's safe to be in. This is regular fence. It's just in a square on top of a wrestling mat. And so we're watching it, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. Back then, there was no athletic commission in Nebraska that overseen fighting. So there was really no rules. You just showed up, signed a little paper. They matched you up as best they could, and weight and whatever you said your record was. You could say you're 100-0, you could say you're 0-100. It doesn't matter. So an announcer gets in there and says, we had an odd number of people sign up. We need someone that weighs between 160 and 190 pounds. And I have no idea why. I just went, I'll do it. So I get a little boil and bite mouthpiece. Someone gave me some basketball shorts, some Century gloves. And that was my first fight. And that's how I started. And I kept going back. They were like almost every weekend. So I lose that first fight. I go back. I fight again. I lose again. I go back again. I lose again. I lose my first 4 amateur fights. There was this old man. I talk about this guy all the time. His name's Marty Anderson. He's still around to this day. This was end of 2006. He texted me today. So he's still around doing his thing. Said he thought I had a little bit of potential. I had a little bit of wrestling ability. A lot of wrestling, a little bit of boxing. Thought I had a little bit of potential. And so he had a building built on the back of his house. And so every day I drove an hour and 10 or an hour and 15 minutes one way to go train with Marty, all the way until I turned pro in 2008. So I lost those first 4, and then never lost again until my second to last amateur fight. And I lost to a pro who was fighting amateurs in unsanctioned areas. So that's how I started.
Well, Big money in those days, huh?
No. I fought in strip clubs. I fought in country bars. I fought in Kansas City one time in a country bar while there was people riding a mechanical bull, and the judges were blowing cigarette smoke into the cage while we were fighting. Lots of strip clubs. Back in the day, a lot of strip clubs would have events, so they'd run a dancer, and then they'd have a fight, and they'd run a dancer, and they'd have a fight. They'd be like on a Wednesday. It was the craziest thing. I fought at racetracks where they'd run a couple races, and there would be outdoor events like in North Dakota, and then they'd run a couple fights and then run a couple races. And I fought in like actual barns in South Dakota before, where they actually took the livestock out to put a cage into it and then run the fight, and they just sell standing room only tickets. A lot of convention centers where they had just laid a carpet over it's like where they show cattle and livestock and pigs and stuff, and they just roll a big ass carpet over it and then set a cage on top of that. Some of the worst places in the world for no money, for really nothing. Like, as an amateur, you don't make anything. Back then I was making money feeding myself really through gambling, where these different groups of there's some gang activity, there's some bad actors, and then they kind of attach themselves to a fighter that they think is good. So, you'd have a bunch of bloods that would say, there's a guy in Minneapolis that they think he's really good. So we're going to book you a hotel. Here's a couple $100 for gas money. Go beat that guy. And then they bet on the fight. And then when you come back, someone gives you $1,000 in an envelope and tells you to f off. So that's how I fed myself for a long time as an amateur.
Wow. So that's a little ways away from the ESPN desk and being in main events at UFC, fighting for the title at UFC.
Yeah. And that was all accidental. I'd watched a little bit of, I used to convince my grandpa to get me, we'd go to Blockbuster Video and it'd be the ultimate knockout videos or the ultimate, whatever. And I'd convince him to buy those. And so I had watched it a little bit, but I didn't really grow up a martial artist.
Wow. So what were the other competing thoughts in your head where you're like, well, maybe I can make money at this as a profession versus what would be the alternative if you didn't take that path? No,
at the beginning, I didn't even really understand that you could make a living doing this. That was never the plan. I was getting in trouble and I didn't really have a focus, and wrestling had always been my thing. And then once I started fighting, it gave me just a reason to do something. It gave me, I almost accidentally fixed my life with it, where, you're going to the gym and you're training, and then if I was partying or whatever I was doing, all those guys were going off and partying. Well, everyone that I was training with, they're like, doing the rest and recovery stuff, or they're getting ready for practice the next day. So I just kind of gravitated towards that because that's what I was doing, having no idea that I could make money. I was still struggling. I was still starving. I just was enjoying what I was doing. So I just kept doing that thing. And I think in 2000, I turned pro in September of 2008. And maybe a couple months before that same guy, Marty, said, you ever think about going pro? I was like, what does that mean? I had no idea what that meant. He's like, well, they'll pay you. It was like not in a grimy envelope, like under the table in some back alley. Like, no, they'll write you a check and you just leave with it. So that was like the first light bulb moment. Like, wow, I could actually maybe I get a car. That was kind of my mindset. Maybe I can get a car that'll actually run. And then it just grew into this thing. I was probably had 3 or 4 pro fights before I even considered what it would take to be a world champion. I was just doing what I enjoyed doing and what felt right in the moment. I was accidentally fixing all the dumb shit I was doing.
So you got wins over several world champions later. So Shogun Rua, Rashad, I think.
Yeah, Rashad Evans.
Who else?
So I got wins over Shogun, Rashad, Alexander Gustafsson. So I think I fought 5 Hall of Famers and I beat 4 of them. The only one I didn't beat was John Jones. John Jones is the only world champion I've ever fought that I haven't beaten.
Yeah. How many people?
He's pretty good at what he does, though.
I heard he's pretty good. Maybe that's
he's pretty good at what he does.
I heard he's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's still undefeated.
Yeah.
He fought everybody and he's still undefeated. I heard he's pretty good. Can you imagine that being, a decade earlier, 15 years earlier, you're in some of these grimy places thinking that, I'm going to be one of the top fighters in the world for years and beat 5 Hall of Famers and several world champions, etc.
No. Back then, I never thought that. I can remember when I decided I was going to, though. I was with my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. And we didn't know each other very long, and she ended up pregnant. And I could barely take care of myself. A couple weeks after we met, I got evicted, and I ended up living with her just out of necessity. And so she's, fast forward, she's 8 months pregnant. We go to this grocery store to buy, like, we'd scrounge change and stuff out of our cars and in the house to buy the ingredients for spaghetti because we're starving. And I remember being too embarrassed. We even went super late to where it was about to close. I remember being too embarrassed to go in with my pregnant girlfriend. She was massively pregnant, to pay for the ingredients for spaghetti with change, and I was too embarrassed to go in with her. And I remember parking at the back of the parking lot and, like, watching her walk in, wicked waddle, pregnant as shit, and absolutely didn't give a. She couldn't have cared less. Like, she just had to go in and do what she had to do because that was what we needed. And I felt like such a coward, like, in the car. And that was when I decided. I used to always say world champion or die trying. And that's when I decided, like, in the car right then and there, like, I'm going to die trying, or like, I have to make this work. This has to work. Because she didn't complain, she didn't bitch, she didn't moan, she didn't give me any shit about it. She was 8 months pregnant. We'd only known each other for like 9.5 months. And for whatever reason, she believed. And I was still kind of on the fence, like, this is kind of just what I'm doing. But that night was when I decided that this has to work. Like, I have no other option. This has to work.
I'm debating, in what context, like, what's more important. Like, I guess you got to have a goal, but goals are really fuzzy for a lot of people. Like, for some people, they have a goal, like, I hope I attain my goal. I wish to have this outcome. I wish. And hope and wish are not real strategies. They're not real strategies to accomplish something. And I think, having that goal, combined with enough, anger or animosity or ambition, some fire inside to be like, my current circumstances not acceptable. You have to do whatever's necessary to get from current circumstance to the goal of that intended circumstance.
Yeah. Well, and, like, that was when I realized I'm either going to end up like my dad, because that's the path that we're headed. And I'm thinking all of this in this parking lot. Like, I remember being a younger kid thinking, like, how did my dad f this up so bad? Like, because he was such a nice guy. Like, when I loved talking to him. Like, he was just such a piece of shit father and provider. And I could never figure out, like, how is that possible? And then I find myself in this car that's got 3 wheels on it that barely runs, watching my pregnant girlfriend go in to buy food because I'm too embarrassed to go with her. That's how it happens, where you either decide that this isn't good enough anymore, like, I can't do this anymore. It would have been way easier for me to say, I'd go find another girl that's maybe in a better spot and go that direction, and we'll just raise this baby as a co-parent situation. And it would have been easier to retract from that situation and just pull out and say, I'm just going to take care of myself. She'll figure it out. But that's not the right thing to do. It's not the easiest thing, but it's not the right thing either. And so I had to make that decision right then, like, whether it's hard or it sucks or whatever, like, I have to figure this out. The title was a means to an end. The title chase, even at that time, I didn't really give a shit about being the champion of the world. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I knew what was attached to that, though. And I knew that was fat checks, and I seen how those guys were living, and I seen, like, even training part, like Jake Ellenberger was a training partner at the time, and he was doing really well. He wasn't the champion of the world, but he was chasing it, and he was doing really well. And I remember training with him in Orange County, and him pulling up to a gas station, swiping his card, and then getting back in the car and then filling his tank. That was so foreign to me, watching him not pay attention, like, how much it cost to fill his car. Like that part of it was foreign to me. And so like that was what rich was to me. Like, well, Jake's rich. Like that's how I felt. And that's what I wanted. Like I wanted to not worry when I pumped gas in my car. Like it wasn't the title, it was the chase and what was attached to that. Because then I seen Jake's friends and like guys that had actually won world titles before. And they were swiping their card at the gas pump and not paying attention to it. And they were just buying whatever they wanted and not paying attention to it. And so like that security and that thing was what I wanted. The title was just how it would get there.
What you got me thinking about that I'm smiling a little bit is such a similar story regarding the gas that, you're not as ancient as myself, but old enough to remember when, gas was like $1 or so.
Yeah.
And I remember being like a teenager. I had a 1975 Cadillac sedan DeVille, which is 500 cubic inch, 8.2 liter, 8 miles per gallon. 8 miles per gallon. And, my buddy and I would try to find, we just wanted to go do something because I had a shitty life at home and he had a shitty life at home. So, we tried to find, $3 or $5 to put some money in the gas tank to go drive this huge car around this extraordinarily inefficient gas. I think I paid $200 for the car. So it's not even in nice shape. It's not a nice Cadillac.
It's not a nice Cadillac.
No, it's like a $200 Cadillac that after the next person I sold it to took it to a demolition derby at a fair and did pretty well with it, actually. It's like 20-foot long, huge car. Any case, my driver, my chauffeur, he told me recently that, so like a week and a half ago, I put we rewind this a bit. In January, I bought a Rolls-Royce Phantom. I made a deposit to have a custom-made Phantom. And like the most expensive one, like to extend it, to have it like 8.7 inches longer, that's an $80,000 upgrade. And then the paint is another $16,000, and the rims are another $18,000, and so on and so on and so on. So it's total is about $800,000 for a car. And it's a nice one. It's nicer than that Cadillac.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
It's a little nicer than that. And what made me think about what you're saying is the driver. I don't put gas in my own vehicles. I have a Maybach. I have a Phantom now. I kept the Maybach. People think, oh, did you trade in the Maybach?
I was just going to ask you that.
No, I just have both.
Yeah.
And another nice one too. But he told me that when he swiped the card to fill the tank, that the tank only, or that the gas pump only allows it to pump $125, and then it turns off, and that's not enough to fill the tank.
Yeah, and you got to do it again.
You have to swipe it again. So if the tank is close to empty, $125 won't fill it. You have to swipe it again because it's got a big 12-cylinder engine. So you got to swipe it twice to fill the gas tank. So you're telling me this about, like wealth is considered your ability to fill the gas tank. I'm like, I don't even fill the gas tank anymore. But I some of the things you're saying, I didn't have food at times. We didn't have money for food. We didn't have money for, even before my father went to prison, when there was money, he was a multimillionaire in the early 80s, but he didn't want to spend that money on me or my mother. He wanted to, okay. But he'd tell my mom, she want money, let me get clothes for the kids. And he's like, take them to a garage sale, take them to Goodwill. And, he was staying in 2-story hotel suites out here at Caesars. He's staying at 2-story hotel suites that has hot tubs and swimming pools in the hotel room, private ones. But, said, take the kid for some garage sale stuff.
That's crazy.
Not for real. So, and then he went to prison after that. So I didn't, then he was even less useful from there. Yeah. So I never talk bad about him, and I don't feel too bad about him. He's still alive, and good for him. But, we never had a close relationship. So anyway, some of the same circumstances you describe. I just think of the analog stories in my life of it's not really, you don't feel proud to buy $1.98 in gas and pay with coins.
Right.
And so on, But circumstances got a lot better for both of us over time.
Yeah, we're doing okay now.
I thought so. I've been thinking.
I'm pumping the shit out of gas. Pumping the shit out of gas.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. but now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.